So some of the things that that we need to think about, we'll probably start with smoke, because smoke has affected many people this year who are not used to smoke. If you're out in the West, you all have been dealing with smoke in the air for quite a few years. In the East here, we've hardly ever dealt with other than localized smoke issues until this year, when we had smoke and coming down and through the entire East Coast out of the Canadian wildfires. And so when we get a north wind, which normally would cool everything off and be lovely, we get smoke. So smoke has particulate material in it that gets into the lungs, and some of it is so small it goes from the lungs directly into the blood vessels and is absorbed into the body. And we do not yet know what the long-term effects of that are going to be. We have smoke exposure for 3 or 4 years in a row. Are we going to end up with chronic respiratory diseases like HEAVES or COPD? Are we going to, and that's human and animal and, dog, cat, as well as wildlife. We just don't know what all these long-term effects are. And so then we have to sort of try and think of things that we can do. In the case of smoke, we can't escape it. We have to breathe. I haven't figured out how not to breathe yet.
Nope.
So if you are living with your horses in a smoky environment, you can disappear into your HVAC, filtered house air, but your horse cannot. Going inside the barn, it does potentially reduce some of the particulate matter in the air, but it doesn't really change that air quality. However, once you get inside the barn, anything that you can do to reduce adding to that particulate matter. So one of the things that I see all the time is we put the horses in the stall and we put a fan on them. Well, many times that fan is blowing down towards the ground, which helps make us cool. I mean, the horses are usually taller than we are, so they don't need it all the way onto the ground. But what happens when that strong airflow goes down towards the ground and towards your bedding? It kicks up a phenomenal amount of dust. So if I've been working in a barn where the fans are aimed at the bedding and I blow my nose, I can see those big particles that I have been breathing in. And if I'm breathing through my nose, I can filter a lot of those out. If I happen to be breathing through my mouth, they're going directly into my lungs. So our dogs are panting because they breathe with their mouths open. So they're going to be breathing all of that particulate matter right into their lungs. The horses at least filter it through a very long nose, so that helps. But we have we want to reduce as much additional dust as we can. So sweep the barn, or if you're using a blower, even more important is to do all your sweeping, your stall cleaning, put the horses outside. Don't have them in the barn while you're creating more dust, because you're just adding to an already huge particulate load. Potentially, if you have some of these kind of hanging screens at the ends of the barn aisle, you can get these screens that hang and they have magnets to kind of hold them together. And the horses actually appreciate them. They can be useful to keep the place somewhat shady. And they may help reduce some of the particulate matter. And some of the people who are in smoky areas feel like their air quality might be a bit better in the barn. It also may be that we just can't see that particulate matter.
Yeah.
because we're in a small space instead of looking out towards the mountains or looking in the distance. And we know the smoke is there when it's smoky because from my house, I can normally see the mountains of the Shenandoah National Park. There are days I can barely see the trees on the edge of my property because of the amount of smoke that's been in the air. And you walk in the barn, you don't have that distance to look through to see the smoke. So you think the air quality is better, but is it really better? It's hard to say.
Though probably the large particles, but there's still going to be so many small particles, right?
Yeah, and it's the small particles that the scientists are beginning to really be concerned about because they are small enough that they cross that blood barrier. They don't get the normal lung tissue captures that dust. So when you blow your nose, you can see the dust that's on it. When you cough things up, there are little hairs in your there are little hairs through your respiratory tract that literally carry stuff out and up. So when you cough and you cough up some phlegm, you're carrying stuff out of your lungs. The problem with these really tiny particles is they get into the lungs and they go straight through into the bloodstream. So once they're in the bloodstream, what are they doing to the whole rest of our body?
And how are they going to be filtered out of the bloodstream?
Right. So they're going to have to go into the liver. I happen to be writing a detoxification article for the Innovative Veterinary Care Journal on detoxifying. And that's going to be, that's one of the things that will happen is that the liver will go to work on detoxifying what's in the blood because the liver is our big detoxifying organ. And it's basically a chemical factory. And it has all of these enzymes and all of these biochemical pathways to detoxify stuff. But if you overload it and it can't do it, what do we maybe need to do to help the liver detoxify?
It's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And some of those sort of micro particles, if you think about smoke, like you build a bonfire out of wood, or you burn a forest that has nothing but wood in it, we know that even just wood smoke from a wood stove produces some carcinogenic compounds. But that's pure wood. What's actually burning in these huge wildfires? Houses, cars, electrical wiring, gasoline tanks, propane tanks, you name it, all of tractors, all
Yes.
these things that should not be burned
Right.
are burning up. So not only do we have, and this is what's the real concern, not only do we have smoke particles, which are way more tolerable, we have all of these chemicals that they aren't meant to burn. Nobody's even studied right down to. So supply a wire, or you have a computer, we know the computer has and things like that in. We're supposed to recycle them so that stuff doesn't get into the environment. Well, those are burning up too. And every piece of machinery has every piece of machinery electronics. So we're burning all that into the air. So we're going to have to pay a lot more attention to this whole detoxification concept in the future. Does anybody have any questions about smoke that they are experiencing in their area? I don't know that we've been as bad in the U.S. in the West this year as in past years, but we've certainly had our share of it here in the East.
I'm not sure why. Ellen, are you able to hear this now? I don't know why you wouldn't be able to because you're here. And Janet says there was a button I clicked on.
What was the button?
Don't know. It's not at our end.
Okay.
Hopefully Ellen's able to be. I'll just see if she's here. Yeah, she's here. Okay, keep going.
Great.
Seems to be working.
Super.
There's a little bit of breakup once in a while, but it's not too bad.
Yeah, I think Starlink is good, but I'm not sure it's perfect.
Well, and I'm not sure that mine is the best for this either. So we'll work it out.
We will figure it out. So one of the things to think about that I actually wrote about for my newsletter this month, and people can go to my website and sign up for the newsletter and find out what's happening on my end. That was Calvin, who likes to say
that was a cat, not an owl, right? It kind of had a big eye.
Yeah, that was a Calvin. He likes to help and participate in things.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I was thinking about in this whole environmental nightmare sort of thing that we get into is that when bad stuff happens, for one thing, we want to have our go bag or our kit, emergency kit, available to us. And we think of things like, if you live in an area where there are no major floods or fires or natural disasters, which is almost nowhere, but there are a few, you still may have a life-threatening injury, or you still could have a life-threatening infection or some other crisis in your animals. So one thing, there's a few things that you would want to have in your go bag or your kit. And this kit should probably be in or available to your horse trailer, especially if you're in an area where you may have to evacuate. Because it doesn't do you any good to have it in your husband's car who is at work when you need to evacuate horses from home. It also doesn't help to not be able to find it. So if you have it handy or have a couple of little kits that are available to you, and a lot of in the big fire prone and flood prone areas, the first responder kind of people recommend that you have a bag that you keep near your front door, near your barn door, that you can grab, and it should have all of your basic stuff. But a couple of kind of first aid things to have on hand that will come into play even when you just have something that's bad that happens. It doesn't have to be a natural disaster. An old dog that all of a sudden takes a turn for the worse and you have to go to the vet's office. Or you have to wait for a vet. You have a horse that's been badly injured. Well, we're having fewer and fewer horse vets in many places around the world.
Yeah, it's a big
and it's harder and harder often to get a vet. You also, in many areas, the small animal emergency clinics are closing or are only available during the day when you don't need them. Or you have to drive 3 or 4 hours to get to one that's open and has a spot for you. So you need some things that you can do. The first thing that should be in everybody's kit is Rescue Remedy, which is a Bach flower. You can find Rescue Remedy now in CVS pharmacies, regular old commercial drug pushing pharmacies. And it comes in many different forms, from sort of the original liquid that has some alcohol in it, to alcohol-free versions, to little pasties or little basically little candy things, all kinds of stuff. So in truth, it doesn't matter what form you have it, as long as you have some that you could feed to horse, dog, cat, and human. Because what happens to the human when bad things are happening?
Stress.
Human is totally stressed out and can't necessarily think straight. Even for a simple colic, most of us can't think straight. We panic, and when my own horse colics, I can be the worst. I forget that I'm an acupuncturist. I forget that I have all these tools. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to have to take her to surgery, and she's just got a mild little bellyache. So we don't think straight. So rescue remedy, a few drops directly into your mouth or into your water bottle, can go a long ways towards helping you as the human assess the situation and take charge in a rational, thoughtful way. I remember wrecking my car one time, and I was obviously kind of shook up and got out, went to the back, got out my rescue remedy, took a deep breath and went, okay, so now how do I get myself out of this mess? Because it just took that stress away. Yeah, I was still upset, but I was able to think. So that's what we need to be able to do.
Do we have to worry about the alcohol with the cats and dogs?
Cats and dogs don't like alcohol. Cats, if you give them stuff with alcohol, they often salivate a lot. But the nice thing with the black flowers is that if you have an alcohol-based one, what you can do is put it in a little bit of water. And that's where you can put it into your water bottle. All you need is 4 or 5 drops into a water bottle, maybe 10 drops into a 5-gallon bucket for a horse. And then you can use that water and it will have that effect. This is an essence. It's like a homeopathic, only it is different. So those drops you put in your water bottle, then you can feed it to your cat. You can spray it. I mean, sometimes when you can't really get a hold of an animal, put it in a little spray bottle and spray it on their face. Spray it in their cat carrier as you're trying to drive down the mountain away from the fire. Spray it in the whole car. Spray it in the horse trailer just to try and calm the situation, because they're going to be breathing in that anti-stress essence. I even used to, when I had cows, when I was going to bring them up into a pen and do things to them or move them or collect them, I sprayed rescue remedy all over the cows, just in general. So it got some on their face, but it got some on their hair, whatever. And it calmed everybody down.
Yeah.
So that's the way you can get around the alcohol with your small animals.
Okay.
Because you're going to probably put it in your water as well.
Yeah.
So the other thing to have on board in this little kit is some arnica, homeopathic arnica. Any potency that you have will be fine in an emergency. If you're going to make your kit, I'd probably put some 30C and some 200C into your kit. The 200 being stronger. So if things are really going bad, then start with the 200. But in truth, you open up your medicine cabinet and all you have is a 6X. It is still arnica and it will still work. If you have one of those lower numbers, you just give it more frequently. So you can give it every 15 minutes if you want to. But arnica is for trauma, any kind of trauma, physical trauma, but it can also be emotional trauma. So in a smoke or fire situation, you might not have physical trauma, but you've shoveled everybody in the horse trailer and you certainly have emotional trauma.
Yeah.
It also can help control some bleeding. And really, in any traumatic situation, you will never go wrong if you give some arnica. And it's useful to have arnica stuck away in your saddlebag, have arnica stuck away in your horse trailer. Have arnica in your glove box in case you have a car wreck. Have arnica stuck around everywhere.
Have arnica to spare to give to other people that don't have arnica.
Yes. Yes. You will be a friend to many people. So if things are really severe, you can give it every 15 minutes, or say you've gone out in the field and your horse has a fractured leg. Give it every 5 minutes until the vet can get there, or a severe injury. You're not going to hurt anything. And that's one of the beauties of the homeopathics, is that you can't overdo them. Another one that's useful to have around is phosphorus, because that's for bleeding. So if you have something that's bleeding badly, this will be particularly beneficial in areas that are prone to tornadoes, because phosphorus stops bleeding. And a lot of times the tornado types of injuries they're big puncture wounds, they're wounds from pieces of building, boards, you name it, that have punctured the body. So that's not as useful in a fire situation, but useful in any kit, because you can, and you end up with bleeding. Can be out on a trail ride. You can step on something and end up with bleeding situation. The other thing that can be useful to have around, especially if you have an old dog or even an old horse that is, they're nearing the end, but they're not anywhere near ready to go. And you don't know what day that they're going to look at you and say, I'm done. And what's really interesting is CBD, or hemp that has CBD in it. And people have heard a lot about CBD, and CBD is the forgive and forget system. So we have fight and flight, and we have forgive and forget. And CBD is that balance to the fight and flight. So these old animals, the nice thing about CBD is you cannot overdose it. It's not like an opioid or a drug. You cannot overdose it, so you can keep repeating it. And I used this for my old Sunny dog, who was almost 17, and I thought that she would quietly pass at home in my arms, but she had other ideas, and I needed to call in a vet to put her down. But in the meantime, she was getting very agitated, so I just loaded her up with 2 or 3 times the normal dose of CBD every few hours, and she would relax again. And this happened just recently to another friend of mine they were taking a dog to be put down, and it was going to be an hour or 2 before they were actually going to get there. The CBD just calmed the whole situation down. So it has that calming effect, and it also has a pain relieving effect. So some of these animals may be in pain, or they may be mentally needing that calming.
Well,
so,
and just in thinking about storms and really severe storms, you had me give Buster, our cat, some CBD to deal with the thunderstorms that were rolling in.
Yes, and my Millie dog absolutely has to have CBD for thunderstorms. She gets very upset. And I give her CBD, and we had, big, scary thunderstorm last night.
Yeah.
She just takes her CBD and goes to sleep under the bed. And that's her little cave. But the CBD keeps her from being agitated. She just goes to sleep.
Well, and also fireworks. That was the other thing.
Fireworks are terrifying to animals. And there is a trend, which, I love to go to fireworks, but the more we really think about the environmental impact of fireworks, the more fireworks are less exciting. Yeah. And they've got all kinds of chemicals that are released into the air, and they scare the heck out of wildlife as well as pets. And there are horses who are affected by it. I had a cat that was very affected by it. She was affected by thunderstorms too, which is not a common cat thing, but that cat was one crack of thunder and you couldn't find her.
Yeah. Well,
So,
after fireworks, Buster's worried about thunderstorms. So
yeah. And so fireworks can also, that kind of sudden loud noise can happen in certainly tornado situations. It can happen in fire situations, things exploding. There's lots of animals don't understand. They don't have a way of understanding that a sudden noise is, oh, that's just a tree falling in the woods.
right.
Or that's just a fireworks that some stupid human has set off. To them, it's a sudden noise. So
An
another,
unexplainable sudden noise. Like
yes,
it doesn't
out of
have
the blue.
any. Yeah.
No, they have no connection to it at all. So that makes up, for fireworks, you can also use things like aconite, or for sudden loud noises. Aconite is a homeopathic remedy that you give internally, and there's a question about phosphorus used internally or topically. Phosphorus is a homeopathic. You use it internally, but it can stop bleeding from internal use. And arnica comes in pellets. It comes in liquids. Again, it doesn't matter what form you get it in. You'll find it most of the time in the stores as either little pill bottles with little globules, little round tiny things, or you'll find it as a ointment or a cream. And the ointment or cream is not going to do the same thing for them mentally, but you can put it on a bruised area or an injured tendon or something like that.
So we've got our first aid kit. So I'm going to have some rescue remedies, some arnica, some phosphorus, some CDB, and maybe some aconite in my go kit, along with like the other important things like my papers.
Yes, papers, bandages. There's all kind. You can look online for go bag kit ideas and make something as extensive or as simple as you want. But make sure you have something that's simple and easy to grab to go trail riding, to go to a show. Doesn't do you any good to be a clone and have your kit at home.
Right. Okay. So those are some things we want because of things like tornadoes or fire. Is there a remedy or something that would be helpful for smoke? For smoke inhalation, what would be a good?
Arsenicum alb is a remedy that can be helpful for smoke inhalation. There's also a couple of herbs that can be beneficial for the long-term smoke inhalation. Things like mullein, which is a plant that grows in a lot of places. It's actually not a native. I always thought it was a native, but it's not. No. I was corrected by a friend of mine. Huh. But it is a lovely herb, and it grows in a lot of places. It's that funky herb that is often 4 feet tall and has a bit of a phallic yellow flower on the top of it. And it grows in a lot of places that are disturbed, where the soil is disturbed. And that you can get preparations of. You can go out and harvest the herb, and there's lots of resources online about how to harvest the herbs and make with the mullein. And marshmallow is another good one, because marshmallow is easy to grow and it's easy to buy as well, and you can make a tea out of it. With both of those, you want to have some of the physical herb present, because the herb itself has these soothing qualities to them. So they help moisturize the lungs, they help carry some of the debris out.
Do we
And
have to be careful feeding herbs that are these two mullein and marshmallow something we have to worry about overdosing on?
No, they're very, very safe.
Okay, so how do we deal with floods? What do we do there? What's our biggest problem?
The biggest problem with floods and excessive moisture is going to be molds. So other than the evacuation thing, which really the same evacuation ideas apply to flooding as to any other evacuation reason. But when you have too much moisture in the ground, you end up with molds that are literally in the dirt, because the molds are really happy to grow in moist, especially moist, warm conditions. So those of you that live in moist areas, you probably deal a lot with white line disease. And that's coming from the ground being moist. The horse's feet get moist. They're much more, just like your fingernails get soft when you get in the bathtub, the horse's feet are soft, and so bacteria can enter much more easily. You also get molds because where is the horse's nose all day?
Down.
Is down by the ground. So you may have dried out your barn, or you may have moisture seeping in at the edges of your barn and actually creating mold around the edges of the bedding. And it's really good to be diligent about that, especially if you have an older barn structure, when you have extreme amounts of moisture. You can also have moisture seeping in from the ground. Alvin, that's really not polite.
Cat butt.
So this is my my warm scarf.
Yes.
For the winter. I don't know why he wants to be here today. It's not exactly winter.
So because you're doing something, Mom, you know, it's like,
yes, and it's a lap.
Yep. So and a shoulder and a neck.
And he can say hi to everybody. So the problem with molds, with wet, is your hay storage. So where are you storing your hay when all this moisture is in both the air and in the ground? So if you have a hay storage in your hay loft, you're probably in good shape unless you have a leak in the roof, in which case you can lose a large portion of your hay and not even realize it. And we've had that happen a couple of times because the barn roof is older. And so the water just drips in, and the next thing you know, 2, 3, 10 bales are completely moldy and useless.
Well, and dangerous.
And dangerously, yes. I mean, they're really a problem. Conversely, if you're storing your hay on the ground, whether it's inside the barn in a stall or like we have it now in a shed, we have to build an impervious floor, because if we just stack it, even just put a pallet down, which will bring it off the floor about 6 inches, and we put our hay on top of that, that entire lower bank of hay, which could be 20 bales, depending on the size of your shed or stall, will be moldy. And the scary thing there is, if you're in a barn situation where you're not the one in control, when they reach that moldy layer, it may not look terribly moldy because it doesn't have water sitting in it. The hay in the hayloft that's been dripped on usually looks pretty rank. Yeah. But that hay sitting on the bottom row of a stall or a shed is very deceptive. It does not smell good, but it doesn't necessarily look bad. So you may have somebody, just barn help. Oh yeah, we're on the next layer. Just open it up and feed it out. and horses are very sensitive to molds. A lot of our respiratory disease horses are extremely sensitive to molds. And I think that many of our horses with allergic respiratory disease, sometimes it's very clear that it's pollens. It'll be like from May to July, or it'll be August to October, and then it goes away. But there are a lot of horses who are reactive all year long. And I think many of those are reacting to the molds that are inside our barn structures. And if you stay damp for a year or two, you're going to have molds growing everywhere, in the walls of your barn, in your basically any place, including things like your basement, but places where you store your feed. If you have a feed bin that sits on the floor, it may be sealed, but a year or two of really damp soil underneath it may change the dryness of it. The other problem that we have with flooding is that water is carried from far away often. And if you are using a water supply, or if your pasture either has a natural water supply, like a creek running through it, or acquires a water source running through it. So many fields are perfectly fine 90% of the time. They don't have any standing water. They don't have any water running through them. But you get enough flooding and the land next to you suddenly runs over. Or the drains by the side of the road become clogged and end up running into your pasture. And that brings all of the toxic stuff from the road. And you really don't want
that. It's a really depressing webinar, okay?
Yeah. And then we can get into all kinds of other things like fly sprays, overhead fly sprays. We're just putting environmental toxins into our horses. So, but water running through our fields can become a real issue, because suddenly we now have our neighbor's cornfield that is full of chemicals overflowing into our horse pastures. Or in more urban areas, many of the not gardeners, but many of the people who have lawns and lawn services use way more chemicals than any farmer actually uses per acre. If you look at the statistics, the average Joe Blow homeowner uses more chemicals per acre than any farmer. Farmer couldn't afford.
There are more and more green services coming on.
There are more and more green services, but if you drive through a large housing development, 3 properties use green services and 98 properties use the regular.
Yeah.
But it is changing. I mean, it used to be you couldn't hardly find a green service. Now,
right,
almost every decent sized community, you can find a green service. And if some of that runs off into your land, try to educate your neighbors about using green services.
So we've got fires, and we have smoke and evacuations. We have floods, and I think people underestimate water tremendously, but I think when you're going to have a flood, I think it's a fire you're going to see coming. A flood can happen in a flash.
I'm going to have a brief interruption here. Somebody drove up in a ATV. No, it's Kenny.
Oh, hi, Kenny.
Yeah. Hang on 1 second.
Okay. All right. If anybody's got any questions for Joyce or for me, now's a great time. Let me see if I can get the chat where I can see it. If you guys got some questions, stick them in the chat. Let's see. This is great information. Okay, this on your so basically right now the webinar is going to be available on Kartra on this platform for 14 days. And I'm having to make decisions about whether or not I'm going to keep putting up all that free content up on YouTube. I know people really like it, but that's got its pros and cons. So right now you're going to have access to this for 14 days. So tell all your friends they can, I don't know if they can sign up post webinar. I have to check that out. That's a great question. Joyce is back.
It's just my neighbor who's been doing some projects.
Yep. So I don't have any arnica. Is there a liquid form of arnica?
You can get arnica in a liquid, and there are some companies that make it in a liquid. You can find it online in a liquid.
And would you ever use phosphorus topically?
No, it's internal. It's just it's a regular homeopathic.
Okay. So if you had severe bleeding, is there something you could put on it topically to control that bleeding?
There is a Chinese herb called Yunnan, and it's spelled many different ways.
You're going to have to type that into the...
You'll find it spelled many different ways, but this is the gist of how it's usually spelled. It's a Chinese formula. It comes in capsules. Occasionally you can find it in a powder. And that can actually be put onto something that's bleeding. And it's quite safe. So that would be another thing you could put in your kit, especially if you're in tornado country.
Yeah. Okay, so we got fires, we got floods, we got, did we talk a lot about heat and what you can do to help cool your horses down?
No, we didn't talk about that one yet. Okay. So extreme heat. The key with extreme heat is to cool, right?
Right.
But when it's 90 degrees at night, you can't even cool off night. And actually, it's the not cooling off at night that is more detrimental to animals' health than even just the extreme heat itself. So
talk a little bit more about this, because you mentioned this the other day and I was like, say what?
Right. So the body naturally gets to cool off at night. And if you go to places like Florida, Texas, Hong Kong, parts of the world that don't naturally cool off at night, you have a condition in horses called anhydrosis, which is their sweat glands shut down. You bring that same horse north, well, you used to be able to bring that same horse north.
Yeah.
And it cools off at night, and many times the anhydrosis goes away. And there are ways you can treat it herbally, you can treat it sometimes homeopathically. There are a number of things you can do to treat it if you live in Florida and you're not planning to move to Pennsylvania. And right now, if you move to Pennsylvania, you still probably will have some nights that aren't cooling off. And the body needs that time to reset and cool down. And what's killing a lot of the homeless people in these really hot areas right now is that their bodies don't get to cool off at night because they don't have any air conditioning. So they are not cooling off. What's killing off some of the cows is the same thing, is they're absorbing heat all day, but it stays at 80 degrees. There are places that are staying 90 degrees in the middle of the night. We here used to cool off into the lower 60s most nights. And 2 or 3 weeks out of this whole summer, we would have hot nights. Now we rarely get below 70 many nights. And that's too warm. And I have in a few recent years started to see a little bit of anhydrosis here, not to the extent that they do down south, but that line of having anhydrosis is going to move up. So how do we cool our horses off, especially when you're in a drought? And the easiest way to cool a horse off is with water, right? And if you run water down their jugulars, on the inside of their forearms, inside their hind legs, you will use the least amount of water to cool them off internally, because you're reaching the blood vessels that are external. You're cooling that blood, and then the blood is carried internally. So using liquid water, that's the best way to do some cooling. But in a drought situation, you can't even spare that kind of water. So there's a company called Equi-Cool Down that they make a cooling towel, which I use all the time. They're great for hot flashes. But it absorbs moisture and releases it slowly. And it's the evaporation that is cooling. So in these hot, dry climates, it works really well. On a 95-degree day where the humidity is 90% or 95%, they don't work quite so well. They're helpful. But in your hot, dry, drought-ridden climates, then these work great. And you can cool an entire horse off with less than a bucket of water. Because
so you just stick it in the bucket of water, put it on the. How would you do that on a horse?
They make if you look up equicooldown.com, they make horse-shaped pieces of this stuff.
Okay.
So that you can wrap it around their neck, you can wrap it around their legs, and it will evaporate. So that's a really, really handy way to cool horses when you don't have access to a lot of water. And you can, if you have, say, a refrigerator or a little refrigerator freezer thing in the barn, you can make some ice cubes and put the ice cubes down the jugular and down the insides of the front and hind legs. And you're not using a whole lot of water, but you're getting a whole lot of cooling.
And so, like, if I was going to take my horse's temperature on a hot, humid day, what would I expect? And if I cooled him down, what would I want to see that temperature be? Would I actually see a core temperature change?
You can see a core temperature change. You may or may not with your average kind of cooling process. Most horses could be as high as 101 on a really hot day. On a normal day, 101 would be considered a that they have a bit of a fever. 100 degrees, 100.5 would be very common. If you were to take your horse's temperature and it would be 102, you really need to be working on some cooling. The other thing that you can do that we talked about last time, I don't know if you have those links, but do searches for misting systems.
Oh, yeah.
The misting systems that are out there don't use a lot of water. And you can put them around a run-in shed. You can put them around a stall. It does help keep down the particulate, dry dustiness because you have some moisture in the air. But it can be very conserving for water. You're not using a ton of water, but you're actually, again, because of this evaporation thing, the environment inside that shed could be 10 degrees cooler than the outside.
Yeah, I'm seeing if I can I'll at least put one up here so people know what to kind of.
Yeah, and there's apparently a whole bunch of them. I originally saw them at a client's, and it was amazing. It was hot outside, and it was at least 10 degrees cooler in the little shed where she had put these around.
Yeah, and there's a number of them, and there's probably a DIY version.
Oh, you can totally DIY it with little you buy the nozzles and you hook them up to the hose. It can be very, very inexpensive to put something together. And they're just a very, very fine mist. The finer the mist, the better. You use less water, but you also have more evaporative cooling area, so that water evaporates faster and it produces more cooling.
Yep. So that's just, yeah, there's a ton of them. So you just look up livestock or livestock agriculture cooling, and I just put up 4. So I'm not sponsoring anybody. I'm just letting you know some basic links where you can find this. Jane says in New Mexico, normal was mid-90s during the day and 60s at night. The humidity has stayed low 10%. This past month set a record for consecutive days above 100, and the nights have stayed too warm, high 80s to low 90s. Yes. OMG.
Yes. Could you imagine?
Cool off in that? It's like,
no, nobody cools off. So we have horses, livestock. So, and in those kind of environments, your big-bodied, warm blood, drafty, pony, Connemara type of body, those bodies are made for Northern European, where you need your sweater in the middle of summer. You used to.
Yeah.
Those big-bodied horses don't cool. Your Arabs, your Florida cracker horses, your light-bodied Akaltiki kind of a horse, those things are going to cool much more easily and be much more tolerant of the
and you'll
hot.
even see that in hair coats, like, you know, Al's part draft, and he just has always had a heavier hair coat versus your thinner coat horses they're gonna cool. Your thoroughbreds with the thin skin with the veins right on top, they're gonna cool a lot easier.
They're gonna cool better. So go ahead and clip your horses if you're in these kind of environments and you have a heavier horse, and they have that thicker, coarser coat. Clip them in the middle of summer. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And also think about your work schedule, because you go to work and you do a workout and it's going to stay 90 all night. In reality, they're never really going to cool down. So unless you really have access to
plenty of air conditioning at the end of your workout, and they're not.
Exactly. So the lighter bodied horses might do fine, or at least be okay. In reality, all of you should be taking it easy, because the humans, you can get into the air conditioning, but it's a huge stress on your body. I'd much rather have.
So are horses better off outside in a shed or under a fan when it's really that kind of like, is that advantageous to get them into a darker area with a fan versus being out in their sheds? Or
a lot depends on the airflow in the sheds versus the airflow in the barns. I mean, I go into a lot of barns and the only airflow is the fan, which can be plenty if it's a good fan. And fans should always be, they shouldn't be the cheap box type fans. They should be a sealed motor fan to be safe. And the box type fans don't even put out all that much air.
No, they frighten me.
And sometimes the sheds, depending on where they're located on the property, you may have a really good breeze. And sometimes you'll find you have a shed and the horses go stand somewhere else, because that's where the prevailing wind is. That's where they get a breeze. So it's going to be very property dependent as to where they are most comfortable.
Okay. It is interesting to watch horses when they have terrain, to watch where they go in certain weather conditions, and you can start to get a good idea about your property and where it's the best for them. They'll let you know.
Yes, if you observe where they like to hang out, then they will tell you a whole lot. And if you haven't built your shed yet, look and observe where they want to hang out, and then put your shed near there. Don't put your shed where you have a nice view of them from the kitchen window because they may never use it.
Right.
So,
All right.
they
So
know more than we do.
we've covered fire, floods, heat. We don't really have a problem with cold anymore, but there could be extreme cold. There could be extreme snow.
There can be extreme snow, and certainly, other than unburying your barn, unburying pathways for the horses to move around. Like a friend of mine had 7 feet of snow last winter, all told.
Where?
Cindy in Colorado.
Oh, okay.
And total of 7 feet of snow. And in the end, she moved her horse down into the valley because the horse didn't move. I mean, she was able to shovel out a path to the hay rack and the water, and the horse basically didn't move more than 35 steps in each direction, and was starting to gain weight because of no exercise, just standing there eating. So she moved down into the valley. And so that's the kind of thing that extreme snow can do. One of the conditions that's actually happening is that in places that used to have just a lot of snow, like up in Canada, over 10 years, they've started to have a lot more ice. So in the extreme cold, in the extreme cold, you can put a blanket on, you can bring them inside. Many of them don't want to be outside in that kind, or they need some kind of shelter.
Right.
But in the ice, when they'd have 6 inches or a foot of snow, and then it would partially thaw, and then you have 2 inches of ice on top of 6 inches of half melted snow. It's lethal. You have a really hard time actually turning them out safely. So you can make paths with manure, or shavings from your stalls, which you then have to clean up once it all thaws. Makes a mess, but at least they can get out and move around. And that is something that people are not used to dealing with in some of these parts.
I can remember when we had, this is going back now, back in the 90s, we had that ice and so many horses were seriously injuring themselves. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. So we had 14 ice storms in a row.
Oh,
yes.
Is that what we had?
Yep. Yeah, it was incredible. And horses were walking out of barns and breaking legs, and cows were sliding down the hills. I mean, nobody could get a purchase because it was just a solid sheet of ice. And that sort of thing is happening in some of these places, because if you have a foot of snow and you get melt for 2 or 3 days, but then it freezes again, you have a really solid, hard sheet of ice that you can't break through easily.
Right.
You can try and compensate by having studs in your horse's feet if they're shod, which have their own complications, but at least the horses might have a chance of staying upright. It used to put big studs in horses in St. Moritz, where they played polo. We played polo on the ice. And, studs that were
2 inches long and don't spike you.
You don't want to get stepped on by one of those.
Yeah.
So, but you can't leave a stud like that on all the time, because the horses are then standing really weird on their feet. So you have to put the studs in and take them out, and that's, it's complicated.
That's a whole other level of care.
Yeah. But most of the time, horses will do way better in extreme cold. You have to watch out for your really old guys, because those guys don't have the internal heat and fire that the younger horses have. So liberal use of blankets in the extreme cold for the old ones is fair, even if you've never blanketed them in their lives. If they're 28 years old and it's 0 degrees day after day, they're going to stay a lot healthier if they aren't burning quite so many calories to stay warm.
Then if you haven't watched Joyce's webinar on blanketing, you can go to the Surefoot Equine YouTube channel and look up her playlist and watch the one on blanketing.
Yeah, that has its own issues.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you need to blanket for your older horses, but you got to be knowing what you're doing there too. But you know, it's like somebody asked me the other day what I thought the best footing was, and I said one that was groomed. And they were a footing company, and they were like, you're right. I mean, it's like it's the care you take of what you have, not just throwing something at it. It's really the important factor there. Let me see if we've got any other questions or anything. Let's see. I'm a funeral director. I have so many postponed burials this year when people and Greta, are they being postponed because of the weather?
Well, if the ground is frozen,
okay.
And that's just a human.
She must be up where we used to use boreum for ice, and it's not a good idea to the possible wrenching issues. Yeah, it's the trade-off between keeping them upright and safe, and the downside of putting boreum on them. Absolutely. And yeah, many barns do have box fans, and it's frightening to me when I walk into barns and I see 2 box fans on every stall and extension cords, and it's just all you have to do is watch Rebecca Husted's webinar on barn fires, and you will never do that again. We had ice she remembered it was back there in the 90s when we had that ice. Yeah. Oh dear. You couldn't do anything. Extreme weather. You don't even think about the things that extreme weather affects at the time, right? You don't think about that kind of stuff, and then you're really shocked.
And then you come up with things like power outages, and so you can have, like, one year we had a derecho come through here in the summer. It was 100 degrees, and I had 45 cows, and we had no power for like 4 or 5, 6 days. So in order to get water, I got a pump that could pump the water straight out of the river. But if you're in a drought, you may not have that as an option.
Right.
So
I was somewhere else when that hit, and I got home and remember seeing all these trees down, and it was
crazy.
It was crazy. We never heard of a derecho. We didn't know what they kept calling it that. We were like, what is that? And it's straight line winds. If you're not familiar with the term, it's straight line winds, and it just it was severe.
A lot of trees. Yeah.
It was pretty bad.
And we think of big storms in the winter when it's pretty easy you can keep your food safe. You might have some frozen pipes, but your food is at least safe. And we don't think about it so much in the summer when the water consumption of the livestock and the horses is so much greater. The volumes of water that you need are huge. In the winter, you might be able to get away with a couple of 5-gallon buckets in a day.
Yeah, it's a big deal. But that talks about power outages. What do you do when you have a power outage, and how do you prepare for that? Because I was busy down here on another meeting, and you texted me about you're filling a tub, and I'm like, I wonder why she's doing that, because I knew the storm was outside, but where I was, I didn't really notice it. So. And
the weather was saying, we widespread power outages. I'm like, well, we ought to have some water handy.
Yeah. Branch down across, cutting for the fall. Opened up one lane.
Oh, okay. So yeah, we have some more trees down here.
Oh dear. From the storm last night.
I guess, yeah.
Oh. All righty then. Yep. That's the other thing, having a chainsaw handy.
Yep.
Tow rope.
Yep. You can do a lot of good with those.
Yes.
Those pieces.
Yes. Brad and I were heading to the barn one night and there was a really bad storm and this pine tree came down in the middle of the road and we just were able to take care of it. All the other cars sat there and watched us do it. They didn't even bother getting out. They could have helped, but.
And, you know, if you have a chainsaw, then it's something that you need to use and practice with.
Yes, not something to just like, just think that you're going to all of a sudden be able to like just chainsaw your way out of things without knowing how to use it. There's electric, there's battery powered
chainsaws now. Yeah, battery powered, and
they can still do damage, you know.
Oh.
So they're still a chainsaw, but they're a little bit less than the gas powered ones. Yeah. All right, so we've covered fire, flood, snow, ice, wind. We really need to be proactive in our adaptations. That's absolutely right. And, you know, and that's the thing is, you know, what everybody's talking about now is it's, you know, the people who recognize that they need to prepare and have preparations are going to be okay. It's the people that are saying, oh, I don't need to get ready, or I don't need to have that go bag, or I don't need to check that my trailer is hooked up and my truck is full of gas. Those are the people that are going to get in trouble.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's the big takeaway is, you know, back in sort of in the old days, it was like, oh, those are those crazy preppers that are, you know, have everything ready to go. The truth is now it needs to be all of us.
Yeah. Yep, it does. All right. Well, Joyce, this has been a really informative webinar and we got all the way through it. I'm super excited about that.
Yeah. And did you hit the record button?
I don't have to. It just does it automatically. So
Okay.
I don't have to worry about hitting the record button, which I screwed up on with the other system. But for those of you that have signed up for Thursday's webinar on PEMF, I have had to move that guest. She's unable to make it on Thursday. And so we've moved her to the 31st. I will figure out how to send you a notice and just move you over. I believe I can. I have asked for support so I can figure that out. And so that you don't have to like register again, or maybe you will, but you'll get an email. Like it's really simple to sign up now, except when something doesn't quite work. And then it's a little bit more difficult. But you know, I know everybody's liking the easier sign up system and they don't have to go through the store. And I appreciate that. I just have to work out kind of the kinks in this system and understand it so that I know what to do. So. Anyway, thank you, Joyce, once again for joining me. And third time's a charm. We got all the way there and I really appreciate it. Yep. And thank you, everybody who's tuned in. We'll see you next time. Yeah, okay. Same time on the 31st, Janet. It'll be the same time. All right, thanks. Bye. Now I have to find the button to sign out. Oh, no, where'd it go? It's gone. I don't see it. Like the button that was there. Maybe if I don't know what happened to it. Reduce the screen size. Oh, there it is. It's way over there. Okay, end.